Hi everybody and welcome back to the painting channel. Today I'm going to be doing this lovely little black-headed gull for you, so let's roll that intro and let's see how we get on. Okay everybody, welcome back. As I said just now, I'm going to be painting this lovely little black-headed gull. Now I saw this on an estuary in Kent near me a few years ago when it was right in the middle of breeding season, and these birds are the most striking at that time of year. And the idea was I wanted to create a picture that didn't have too much information in the foreground or the background. It was muted enough to have almost being lost in tone and color and value, but I wanted the central figure to really carry the day, and the striking markings on this bird at this time of year just meant that it was perfect for this idea and perfect for this painting. And I also managed to create a compositional value where I got it right up into the top quarters and over to one side, where the idea is that that's where you look first, and it was compositionally pleasing as well. So without further ado, let's get on and let's see how I made it. Okay, so as usual, I'm using Arches 300 gram, 140 pound, and it's a rough paper. So let's get on. It is a block, of course, and it is 100% cotton. So moving forward, let's get on with the drawing. Okay, so the drawing's all done and we're going to get underway with the painting. First thing I'm going to do is wet the paper with clean water, nothing more. Clean brush, clean water, that's all you need. But you could, if you wanted to, have gone around the bird and preserved that and left it as dry paper. I chose not to. I'm primarily using some Payne's Grey from Windsor and Newton, and I'm making a very weak tea wash, just going in to stain the paper with some initial ideas of how I want that water to go. But at the same time, I'm also leaving little bits of white paper. Now this will dry much paler and will necessitate more layers going in later, but it certainly gives me a benchmark to start by and to see where I want to take it. The idea of the water, or certainly the idea of leaving the white paper, is to give that little bit of light that glows through the water in the photograph. And that's all I'm doing at this stage. Okay, so at this point I've decided to add just a little bit of raw sienna to the mix of the Payne's Grey. It's still quite weak, and I've added it to the wake area as well behind the bird. But there's an awful lot more white paper being left. That way it shows the disturbance in the water and the softness in the transition of the colour where the paper is damp just works very well. Now I'm mixing up a darker or stronger mix of Payne's Grey, adding a little bit more of the raw sienna to that mix, and it has to be stronger with much less water. That way I don't risk cauliflowers forming in the damp layers underneath. But the color here is a stronger color, it's a darker color, it's looking at to see where I want things to go, and it will dry lighter. I'm just tidying up and cleaning off around the body of the bird before we go on. Okay, for now then the water is done. I'm going to let it dry off before we come back and do some more to it later. But in the meantime, I want to turn my attention to this beautiful gull's black head. It is, after all, what drew me to do this picture. It is the most striking in breeding plumage and given its name as a black-headed gull. Now I'm using very thick, very neat Payne's grey for this. I'm going to come back in and I'm going to lift some off because it is quite cool on top and there is a little bit of light showing, but I just want to be very careful as I go around and create this. I don't want to paint the eye in, I just want to go around that space and outline and then just fill in that space so I make no mistakes. I'm being very careful. I'm using a number 5 round brush to do this. Now I'm adding a little bit of vermilion into the end of the beak. I thought these birds had quite a red beak, but I may be wrong in that. It's certainly got a reddish tinge to it, and I've put the red in as a vermilion that it will then go back into that Payne's grey and create that red essence, that little tinge of red in the end of the beak there. But there's not a lot of detail in the beak because of the amount of contrast between the head, the beak and the water behind. But this will set up. Now I'm using some clean water in a damp brush and I'm lifting off some of that Payne's grey so that I can then come back in if I want to, add to that maybe a little bit of blue, a little bit of ultramarine at some point in the future, but certainly I can come back into that later on and add some extra strength once this is dry, once I know how that value looks when it's all dried up on the paper. Okay, so I'm quite happy with the way this head is looking right now, and we're going to let that dry out before we come back. But in the meantime, I just want to put a little bit of blue, maybe a bit of blue violet, so I'm testing my colors first. But I want to come down the chest of the bird and just run it up along that black edge just to give it that bluish look. With that done, I'm going to add a bit of vermilion to that blue and I'm going to start on the bird's wings. Okay, so with the bird done as far as I want to go right now, I'm making several puddles of colour because I want to turn my attention back to the water now it's dried off. I'm making cooler ones, I'm making warmer ones, more yellow, a little bit of cobalt going into that, as well as raw sienna and other colours. These puddles I can dive into as I want to. What I want to start doing is suggesting the ripples being pushed in the front of the bird, as well as some of the initial colors going to be used in the reflections of the bird in the water. I'm working very slowly. I took a lot of the water out of my brush with a paper towel and just checking as I go forward. I'm looking carefully and I'm looking at the reference carefully. I'm just not going too mad, because if you do, that's when a mistake will happen and you can't change that so easily. I want to have this not too heavy. I want the water to appear very ephemeral, very fleeting, very light against the bird, and that's what's going to create the interest and the contrast with this painting. So as I say, I'm just being very careful, but I'm also adding another layer. Now as I said, the paper is dry, so I can actually work in a much more fluidic state with the pigment. I don't need so much heavy pigment in there. I can go back to a very watery one. As long as I don't go too mad and disturb the paint underneath, I will get away with it. Now I've come in with a slightly deeper color, and this does have a little less water in it. And the idea with this is to create much greater degrees of contrast. I've left the lightness above the head because you've got the dark head of the bird doing all the work for you. and I wanted to have that lighter neck area. I wanted that to be picked out with darker water patterns behind it, and it will just throw the image forward. That's the whole idea. It's contraflow or something very similar to that, where you're putting what's light on the subject, putting a bit of dark behind it, and where it's dark on the subject, put a bit of light behind it as well. It just helps to throw the subject forward, and it helps to create that beautiful contrast. Now I'm using some darker areas here, and I'm just coming around with that first real strong reflection right up to the bird, and it actually then makes it sit on the water quite definitely. There is nothing to chance. It is now on the water, and I got an immediate reflection, and there's quite a bit of yellow in there, quite a bit of raw sienna being used again, and I've left that little bit of light right up where the leg emanates from. Can't put the leg in yet because obviously it's got to dry off, and it will just spread and bleed everywhere. I have to say, I really have enjoyed the last few minutes for this painting, because I've enjoyed creating this wonderful reflection in the water, and it is quite a detailed set of various little color statements, you know, warms, cools, greens, darks and lights, and I'm trying to look at the reference and try to recreate them as best I can. And these final stages of the darks, the reflections of the head and that of the tail that I've just finished, they really do almost require just drawing with the paint, just almost looking very carefully. But please don't obsess over getting it exactly right. Mine is not exactly as the reference is showing. It is merely a sort of statement that is, I hope, suggesting as close to the reference as possible. But don't feel that you've got to get every mark exactly spot on. You really don't need to do that. Just as long as you're in the ballpark area, you're good to go. Now here I'm adding in a little bit of Ultramarine Violet to this mix, and I want to come in with a slightly stronger mix on the wake area, because there's a lot of water disturbance here and the paper has dried again, so I can come back in. I'm actually re-wetting with some clean water up to the top so that I can put some colors in but let them diffuse more easily into the background without having hard edges. I was trying really hard to not get hard edges as I progress with this wake area, but I wanted the water to bubble, and that's what I'm trying to do. Okay, so with some more Payne's Grey and a little bit of Vermillion, I'm going to put in that slightly darker look at the back leg underwater. You can't see the other one, it's too far away. And indeed, this one, as it descends deeper in the water, dissipates and just goes into nothing. But enough of that colour to show that there's a back leg there propelling the bird. Okay, so now I'm mixing some blues, some blue violets, ultramarine violet, and I'm turning my attention to the darker passages of the bird's wing. Those lower areas that are where the thicker parts of the feathers are laying over other feathers, if you get my meaning. But they are thicker right at the base, but then I'm going to use some water and no paint in there just to make them dissipate as they go up over the top of the bird. So I'm putting the darks in first, getting them set up, and whilst the paint is still damp, going back over, teasing those edges out with dampness, clear water, not too much in the brush, and letting that go back into absolutely nothing. And I think it really does work well to suggest the light and the forms on the wings. Now there is a very strong contrast on the lower part of the wing where it's on the white feathers. I try to make those as realistic as I can, and I'm just coming back in with a little bit more dark right at the bottom of each of those areas, just increasing the contrast between the light and the dark before going forward. Okay, so we're drawing to a close on this painting right now, and I'm coming in with all the finer detail. I'm using a round number 5 brush, using the same mix as I did with the head, and I'm putting in the very final black marks on the fine tips of the wings, these very end of the flight feathers. There is also some white barring. Now I'm trying to cut round those so that I don't have to try and come back in with any body color later on to put them back in. It's a little bit easier to cut round and leave them because you've got that beautiful white paper piercing through and creating the ultimate contrast. That little bit of lead edge to that last wing flight feather going in, and then a slightly lesser dark, a little bit more of the sienna coming back in. Not sure if it's part of the tail or the other wing, but it is there, and it's a slightly lesser dark than the actual wing flight above it. Now I'm putting in a little bit of blue around the eye. There's a little white mark around the eye, but it's not white, it's actually an off blue color. I'm going to let that dry before I carry on. Now I'm coming in with some much darker values on this beautiful reflection. Had to wait for it all to dry before I did it, but now it's dry. I can come back in with my mixes of the dark Payne's grey, the greens, the yellows, whatever I'm using to create that lovely final illusion of the reflection. Okay, so we're in for the last little bit, and I'm going to work on the eye right now. I've put a darker color together with the red and a bit of the Payne's grey. I'm using a rigger, and I'm being very, very careful. One slip here, I can wreck it all, and I don't want to do that. And I'm also resting on a piece or clean sheet of paper so that I don't have any dirt. If I do on my hands or anywhere, I'm not going to wreck all that lovely work that I've done. I've gone back to a slightly bigger brush now, and I'm moving some of that dark pigment around just to blend the head in, finally adding a little bit of ultramarine blue into the very top as well. It's not strong, it's just there to influence and cool that top bit down and finish the bird's head off once and for all. I'm loving the way this has gone, and I really am enjoying the whole of the process and the painting of this bird. Now I did decide that there was a little bit of light missing from the eye, not a catch light as often you see. It's a little bit of light on the round fleshy area surrounding the eye itself. So I just put that back in, and job's jobbed. I'm really happy with that. I'm going to sign it, and yeah. And look forward to getting on with the next painting. I hope you've enjoyed this, everybody. I've had a great deal of fun with it, and I catch each and every one of you very, very soon in the next painting. Take care. Bye-bye. Okay, everybody, I had a lot of fun doing that, and I'm sure you got something from it as well. Now, I'm sure you've also noticed that there was a big change in the way that I presented this video to you this week. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of why it changed. I will do that in the next video, I hope. But there was a real good reason for the need, and I do hope that you enjoyed it. I do hope that it didn't detract from anything that you're used to, and in fact that you may have even found it even better. But please, any thoughts in relation to that, put them in the comments underneath this video. I'd love to hear from you, love to hear your thoughts on the matter, and if I can do anything to improve it in the future, of course I will do that. But if you've enjoyed it, then don't forget the reference photo and the line art for this painting will be over on my Patreon for you to freely download. You don't need to be a patron to do that. Just pop on over there, download them, and have a go at them. And if you do that, then why not put your versions over on the Painting with Paul Apps page on Facebook? Join that, get involved with the crowd there, and I'd love to see the results of what you do. But while you're over on Patreon, why not check it out? It doesn't cost you anything to do that, but at the same time you can see what the tiers are offering you, and if you want to get involved, I'd love to welcome you on board as my latest patron. And there is also a pure oil tier for those of you who really do enjoy oil painting, and there's one dedicated for you guys as well. Now that brings me on to another subject. Now, one of the things that has changed is that you will have also noticed that I'm putting one video out every 2 weeks on this channel, and in between that, one video on my oil painting channel. It's because I'm unable time-wise to make a video each week for both of them, and one was suffering, and I really felt the need to create equal amounts of videos for both channels. So one on here every fortnight and one on there every fortnight. And if you do like oil painting too, hey, join both videos, subscribe to both channels. It would be fantastic, and you would help both channels grow, especially the oil channel. It's a very, very young channel, and it does need all the support that it can muster. So please pop on over there and subscribe, hit that bell icon, click that notifications tab, all those things, add comments. Love to hear from you, love reading your comments anyway. In the meantime, I'm going to stop bashing you over the head with all my promotion and let you get on with your lives and enjoy this painting. I'm going to get set up for the next one. Catch you in a fortnight. Take care, all the best, stay safe. Look at that oil channel too. Take care. Bye bye.